Keep the applause going. Scott Hutchison. We're full of them.
You guys have 3 mics. That's amazing.
Unlike many places where you've been spending your time lately, I'm sure.
No, yeah, we usually just use one.
So you touched on it a little bit as you played, but these songs are old.
Yeah, they are. Well, yeah, they're mostly. The album came out 10 years ago this spring, and the songs are older than that, you know. So they're just getting ready to go to high school, I suppose. These songs, you know. It's funny. Well, it's because it's funny.
Spending
I always
some time
think
in the
about
basement, imagine.
Spending time in the basement, yeah. But it's like funny when my songs about fucking are getting ready to go fuck themselves. It's,
Is it strange to be revisiting this material now? Though I'm sure everybody knows, but for those who don't know, the tour is the 10th anniversary of the Midnight Organ Fight.
It is, yeah.
How is it for you to be at a 10-year marker point revisiting this album?
It's I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I had either forgotten or blanked out from the time when we were first, the main thing that strikes me is not so much the content. The content is what it is, and emotionally, in 10 years, one would have hoped to have moved on, and I have. It's okay. It's cool, but it's just thinking about the, being now I'm 36 when we were touring, obviously, 26, 27. Even just then, how much more I could get away with, like, abusing my body on tour. It's I get kind of pissy if we do more than 4 shows in a row now, but I remember we would happily do like 12, 13, 14 shows without a day off and stuff, and nobody cared. It was just like, we were so full of excitement. This album snowballed for us that year, and one of the reasons why I have such affection for it is that essentially we got back off that tour and I didn't have to go get a job. It's as simple as that, So yeah, it's I have a great deal of affection for the album, and hence why we decided to roll it out.
Well, and it seems that a lot of other people have a great deal of affection for this album.
It's true, too. It's true. There's I would say about 80% of the conversations I have about our music are still with fans of the band are still about that record. A friend of mine who runs a record shop said that it's our business card album.
It makes sense.
It's like, if you don't like this, you're just not don't bother, So,
well, and interestingly, you guys announced that you're going to go on tour and perform the record, and I saw that come across, the email, and was like, oh, that was not that long ago. 10 years doesn't seem like a big time. But then I went to look and get tickets, and they were all sold out.
Yeah, people are into it. I don't know. I think it's not just for us, this tour. It's not selfish. That's because when I was saying before, I actually used to think that this kind of thing was pretty corny, and sort of some kind of obvious way to make extra money or something. But what we did instead was we kind of, instead of completely rinsing the concept, we decided to play shows that were approximately the same size as we did back then. Hence why they sold out so very quickly, and lots of people complained about it as well. So there's a lot of unhappy customers. They might never come back to a Frightened Rabbit show. It's like, but the problem is they get back in the day, I guess, before your audience had a direct line straight to you. It's like, it's not my fault that all of this happened, but they can contact me and say, "Hey, dickhead, you gonna add another show or what?" And it's like, there's 10 people in between me and adding another show. I don't have control over that, but I'm the first port of call. So like announcing these shows and them selling out, like some of them genuinely within minutes was, I remember I was taking a train ride and I was just like, I just opened Twitter to see how the sales were going, and then just this volley of abuse at me from people who claim to love my band, but it's like, yeah, you don't like me now.
What do you think? I mean, obviously we have the lens of time to look back.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have reviewed the record, discussed the importance of the record, and obviously you guys recognize the importance to revisit it now for fans. What do you think is the connection that brought so many people to this particular record?
It's very much. It's probably the most open album we've ever made. Lyrically, thematically, there's a great deal of honesty on it, which I think people always connect with. The strange thing about that, though, is even though that was a success, after we toured the album, towards the end of that tour, it was like a year and a half, and I just started to feel like I was on stage complaining at people or revealing too much, and there's something special about that naivety that we had that created something that wasn't censored as such. Like you said, there's kind of use of poetic structure to kind of veil and romanticize these occasionally pretty painful times, but it's laid out, and I think the other thing is I joke now about it being a cold-hearted commercial enterprise because heartbreak never goes out of style. So there's always going to be some poor bastard who's just been dumped, and this record has become a bit of a an anthem for the heartbroken, I suppose, because I was at the time.
And you were saying before that you get a lot of those stories. People will just come up to you and start unloading.
They do, yeah. That was a dirty laugh, but unloading. Come on, they do. That's what I thought he was getting at. Sorry. Let's get back on track.
Mine's out of the basement now.
Let's get back on. Yeah, I know. They do, and it's strange. A friend of mine once said that and this isn't unique to our album or our band, but because of this consistency of the subject matter within this album, he said people, and it's usually a kind of breakup situation where someone loses the person that they loved the most, and then there's me. And for those 2 weeks, I sort of, it sounds creepy, I sort of seep into their lives, and for that reason, I think a lot of people when they come and talk to me and share their memories and how what they associate with that album, kind of already feel like they know me well enough to say these really personal things, and that's lovely, but also like, I had to take a little step back from it at one point because it becomes kind of draining, and there's like a responsibility there that is difficult to come to terms with in a way.
They've heard your heavy story through the songs, and they think, "Oh, well, share mine with you." And
yeah,
we can go through it together. And
well, little do they know I'm totally fine by the time they're talking to me anyway, because it's all happened like a couple of years in advance. But yeah, and it's not a negative thing for people to connect, project their lives onto something that I've made. Yeah, I like it.
And the other question that I had was, as an artist, you've not stopped working. You've been very busy over the past 10 years. Frightened Rabbit put out Painting of a Panic Attack. It's a 5th studio album, is that correct?
Yeah.
Is it strange to constantly be presented with the old instead of wanting to talk about the new record, talk about even the Al John's kind of artwork?
Yeah, the solo. Honestly, I have to put myself in the shoes of a music fan, which I am as well. Where I think maybe you guys can agree or disagree on this theory, but I think the first record you hear about your favorite band generally tends to be the one that remains your favorite. Yeah. That album, it doesn't have to be their first album. It's like it's your entry point to it, So, like going back to when I was a teenager, I definitely love Verses more than any other Pearl Jam album. I don't listen to it anymore, but it's like that's where I came in. So and a lot of people came in at that point. So that's why I think people, and I can't complain about that. At least they're enjoying something that I've done, even if they hate the new ones, which is fine as well.
I don't think anybody hates.
Okay,
but we can talk about it. There does seem to be, with painting especially, a massive progression in how the music is produced.
Yeah.
I guess also in how you guys wrote the record. Why don't you talk a little bit about that process and the change from 10 years ago to now?
I mean, 10 years ago, we didn't have any fancy equipment, for one. I was, writing and recording songs onto a cassette 4-track. The leap that I thought we took sonically between our first album and the Midnight Organ Fight now seems ridiculous to me, because I was like, oh, this is really polished. And I had obviously had called to listen back to the second album recently to just learn the songs again, and it sounds scrappy to me now, but I remember thinking it was super polished. But I guess we have been progressing, but at the same time, there's a lot to be learned from, again, that kind of naivety of making that album. There's something very human in that, and I think if you remove that entirely, then then your music will lose out. So I have definitely taken some, tips from that 25-year-old version of me to maybe try and tap into that a little bit more going forward, because I think things can get overproduced, and I think we've been guilty of that. So, it'd be nice to just, keep the mistakes in. Don't erase them on a computer, and which is all too often the case now.
Well, and that's a very interesting comment to make. So many people talk about the rawness and the honesty of the lyrical content, but that is also then served by the rawness and honesty of the recording.
It matches, yeah. We didn't really know what we were doing. And there was no expectation of an audience. I didn't really know how many people were going to hear it. So therefore, that allows you to be much more bold in your decisions. There's always something now making a record. There's like a much larger group of people in the back of your mind. As much as you may try and make an album just for yourself and for the band, the audience is there a lot. Your live experience is there. It's like, oh, this little whoa bit's gonna kill live, and it's there. It's the whole process now is trying to be a little naive about how you're making the music and not censoring yourself too much. And if a mistake sounds good, well, maybe you should keep it, or do it again, because if you do it twice, it's not a mistake. That's it. That's how it works, right? Just in
I think
life,
it's the third time.
Just everywhere.
third time is intentional. And so with painting, you recorded big portions of that, or produced big portions of that here, right, in Brooklyn?
Some of it was in
with
Brooklyn.
Aaron
Dessner used to have a studio in Ditmas, and he doesn't have that anymore. But that was the room, that was the room where they recorded most of the records up till the last one, pretty much. Yeah. The bulk of it, and it's a tiny garage out the back of his house, but it's an extension of his brain. So when we got there, we were in a bigger, fancier studio upstate near Woodstock called Dreamland, which was beautiful, but we did try and kind of rough it up a little when we got to the garage, as Aaron calls it. Yeah.
Well, there was a lot more difference with Painting of a Panic Attack than 10 years ago. You wrote the album in a very different way as well, right?
It was remotely written, really, because I had moved to Los Angeles, and we were, for that reason, so I'd always relied very heavily, certainly for the last 10 years, had relied quite heavily on my bandmate Andy, who is very, very proficient in music software, and he just recorded all our demos, and I didn't have to push a single button, And then I moved to LA, and I'm like, I'm gonna have to figure this out. So started, using Logic, and that introduced a whole new raft of sound to me as well. So I wasn't necessarily sitting down, as I did with almost all of the Midnight Organ Fight, was sitting down with a guitar in a room writing like that. That kind of went out the window, and I wrote a lot more from beginning with a loop or electronic sound, just because I was excited by this, new world that had been opened up within my laptop, So that was a progression, and yeah, just the back and forth collaboration was. Well, things take like 2 days to come together because you got like an email there when they're asleep, and then they send me back what they've done, and I'm asleep, and then it goes back and forward, and let's call the whole thing off. And but no, it was a little bit of a longer process. But you know, I think it doesn't matter if the situation is better or worse than the last record. It just needs to be different.
Yeah, I was going to ask if now going back and looking, has the nostalgia gotten to you as well? Do you look back at those sort of earlier times of the band and think, man, it was so different back then? I opine for that past? Or I
don't pine for like turning up at a venue with my guitar, with my pedals in a plastic bag. You know? I definitely don't pine for that. But our setup is quite complex now. Sometimes that can be a pain. And yeah, there was an innocence to it that, you know what, it's just naturally, it goes. Your music becomes a business, your band becomes a business. It's you know, hard to avoid that if you want to make a go of it. So it does change. I don't pine for it. I mean, you know, I'm able to do this freely and sort of focus on nothing else, and that's a privilege that I, you know, definitely don't take for granted. So, no, it was fun. It's just like thinking about it. It exhausts me to think about that time because it was ridiculous what I could get away with.
One of the things that has also come along with the new record that is more different, and I think it's also we're in a different landscape as far as being musicians and artists in the world today, are some of the videos that you guys have put out.
Yeah.
And I'm curious how involved in some of that stuff you are, because they're not like a typical music video. There's sort of these micro vignettes of interpretive storytelling.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering how heavy-handed your involvement in that is, or if that's something that is done and then you get to experience it as a viewer.
Our involvement and the reason why our videos are done that way, as in they're sort of a narrative, is that we don't want to be in them. So we try. It's like sort of pitched for people to make kind of little mini movies to our songs, because I don't think anyone gets into Frightened Rabbit because they are attracted to us. So. It's just a fact. I'm all right. I'm all right with being substance over style. But no, the videos. I actually much prefer that. You know, we have had to do a couple of performance videos, but I think generally they suck and they're not interesting. They don't say anything and they don't take the song into a new realm. So I'd much rather have someone else's story plunked on the song, and then that puts it into puts a new perspective on things. It's much more interesting. But I don't really have anything to do with them particularly, but I always prefer to see what someone else's interpretation of the music is.
Is there, can you talk about maybe a reaction that you might have had from seeing some of these videos, like the video for Sober or Wish I Was Sober?
Sober, that was full on, yeah. It's a drunk lady having a really bad time, and yeah, no, I was sort of struck by that. That was more. I was further than I thought the song went. I mean, the song's kind of like it has depth, but not. I don't think it's distressing. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't my favorite video actually, but you know, it happened. Yeah.
I'm just curious about the control and letting that control go, and how other people interpret what you're putting forward.
That's actually one of I would call that one of the like greatest pleasures of doing this work is not having, once it's out, it doesn't belong to us or me anymore. It's in the hands of, or the ears or the brains of the listener, and that's really exciting for your album to like pinball around, and different interpretations, and hopefully, and again, like I ask people this a lot, and I could ask you now, if you're listening to, it doesn't have to be a Frightened Rabbit song, but if you are listening to a song, and are you playing a movie in your head that involves you or the person that's singing it? So I would hope that it's not me. I don't want to be in your movies, all right? I'm not attractive enough to be in your movies, okay?
But you're currently being in a movie that's being made right now.
Well, it's appropriate that I'm in that because it's a documentary about Frightened Rabbit.
Right.
So, couldn't avoid that one. Guess I'm going to have to be in that video. No, I'm really excited about that.
There's probably people who would volunteer to play you in the documentary if you needed.
That'd be awesome. Actually, yeah, apparently the cop from Stranger Things is coming out to the show tonight. Maybe he could do it.
Well, I was also thinking maybe we kind of look a little
You want to be in it too?
similar.
Okay, fine. Yeah.
But how, this is a guy who's following you around with a camera as you're going through this retelling of the past story. Like, does it ever reach a point of just surrealness of like what is happening around me that I'm no longer in control of? This life has come into itself.
Yeah, see, that's where you just lose your mind with anxiety. I think this band has given me cause to sort of practice, a lot more living in the moment and acceptance of that and mindfulness. It's been hard and it doesn't always work, but if you do get too caught up in it, because it's not real life, really. I go back to real life when I go home and I go out on tour and succeed at that and I'm comfortable there and I'm happiest when I'm performing in a way. And I go home and it's just like, what the fuck do I do? Who am I as well? You live, a lot of what I kind of had to do was, because when this album first came out, the one we were talking about, I was receiving a lot of, people's stories, people's praise as well. And that can take you in a bad direction, I think. So I have to now almost, there's a persona that I've maybe developed a little bit, which stops me from being too personally involved in it. It's really important to keep my own life for me. So there's been adjustments along the way, and there's been like proper breakdowns as well. It's not always been fun, but I'm grateful that it's caused me to seek out tools to sort of mentally survive. Yeah, but it's a drain sometimes, for sure.
We do want to leave plenty of time for members of our audience to ask questions. So if you guys do have questions, make your way to a microphone. While people are getting set, I want to ask you about the experience so far of the Midnight Organ Fight 10th Anniversary Tour. You've got a couple shows under the belt. There's a handful more going on. Are you enjoying yourself doing this?
I am. Yeah, I said that it feels like being the DJ at a really weird wedding. Sort of... like everyone knows what songs are coming next. There's crying, there's drinking. I mean, that's weddings, right?
Yeah.
Because we're playing the album in order, which to me is the structure of an album and the running order of an album isn't necessarily ideal for a live show either. There's two different art forms, I think. So I've been getting used to having big depressing dips in our set. Which are kind of difficult for me to deal with because I like to keep things exciting and upbeat. So it's been an adjustment. I'm really enjoying it, and I hope that everyone that comes is also getting a kick out of it too.
Well, and I was curious. A couple of years from now will be then the 10th anniversary of the winner of Mixed
I don't
Drinks.
like that record. No, no, we're good. We're good on that one.
Let's take a question from the audience.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
So a silly question. I've noticed a lot of musicians move to LA.
Yeah.
Have you noticed that? And why did you move to LA?
Well, if they did, I didn't meet any of them. Because I had no friends out there. Actually, I kind of got why I moved there because my girlfriend lived there at the time. And that was the only reason I had to be there. It's a good reason, but I didn't have any ambitions to work in the kind of the world that exists out there, because I didn't really find a very coherent music scene that I could step into particularly. It's all very disparate there, a lot of closed doors, I think. So the one place I found solace was in the form of a small theatre called Largo in West Hollywood, which is run by a Irishman named Flanny, and it turns out lots of stand-up comedians really like Frightened Rabbit. I think we're all depressed at heart, so I ended up doing some really great shows with great comedians there, and that was almost the only kind of community I felt there. So if there are musicians listening or watching this, I mean, I just don't move to LA. It's weird. It's so strange for it to be. Surely it is one of the most creative places on earth because lots of cool stuff gets made there. But you don't feel that within the city. It's like it's all happening behind closed doors, and it's like I just didn't feel like there was a creative hub that I could get involved in there. Or maybe just nobody liked me. So who knows? But I didn't have a terrible time there, but it wasn't for me in the end.
Take another question.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm so excited you're here because now I get to talk about my heartbreak. No, I'm just kidding.
Hey, no, let loose. Come on.
No, I'm cool. I'm cool. I'm good.
All right, good. You're good now?
Yeah, I'm great.
That's awesome.
10 years. We've been through stuff.
I'm really
I
pleased.
love this record.
All right, great. That's a new one. You don't hate it.
No, I think it's good.
Awesome,
I like all
thank
your
you.
records. But I wanted to ask you. First, I was like, oh, why did he move to LA? But they already asked that.
Yeah.
So now I want to ask, when is it time to move on to the next record? I mean, with bands that have lots of studio albums, it's hard to please all the fans because you go and everyone's expecting to hear their favorite song and they don't.
Yep.
So when is it time? When do you start like feeling, oh, maybe this is something for the new album?
Oh, like when do we start writing that? Really? I think the beauty of a relatively long touring cycle is by the end of that you're pretty sick of the material that you just wrote, and you're also noticing a lot of the flaws in it and the ways that you would like to improve on that next time. So that's handy, and for us, it seems to take the timeline is like finish a tour, do nothing for like a month. That's like kind of decompress and try and start living normally again, and then we'll try and find another thing to do that isn't necessarily Frightened Rabbit. You have to have some distance because you spend all your time in the pockets of one another, and just personally, you need a break from those guys, especially my little brother who plays drums. Anyone else fancy like taking a sibling on a tour bus around the world? Oh, I love the guy, but anyway, so having said that, we are, I guess this tour is kind of our in-between thing, and we've already started writing the next album. We're taking a different route with it in that we feel like at this point we're kind of ready to kind of self-produce a lot more. So we've kind of refurbished our studio, and we're going to do it there, and it's all going to be much more in our hands as opposed to bringing in a producer, which is nothing wrong with that, but I think we just feel it's time to let our own voice go kind of untrammeled in a way.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi.
Thanks for being here. I'm just kind of curious, how did you guys decide the name of your band? Is there like a story about it? Or?
There is a story. I was very shy as a child, and that was a nickname that my mum and dad gave to me when you go to those when you're a kid and you're going to parties that your parents' friends' parties, but their kids aren't necessarily your friends.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I know what that means.
I really hated those events, and I was just very shy, and that kind of comes across as being antisocial. But I guess I would just kind of sit in the corner, like with the Frightened Rabbit look on my face, and not talk to anyone. So I thought it would be humorous to call the band that I hoped to play in front of a lot of people after a sort of social anxiety, So that's where it comes from.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Let's take a question on this.
You was first.
Okay, go ahead.
Hey, thanks for being here. So my question is about the artwork that you did for Michael Peterson. Is that how you say his last name? The Oyster, the poetry book. How do you find the artwork that you want to make out of a poem? It seems like they're very different mediums. So how do you draw the essence out of it? And then
They are, and Michael's poems are often quite sort of sprawling and long, and that is hard to distill into one image. But what I tended to do was, because I really think about poetry, the way that it can be often quite studiously worked through. I much prefer hearing poems performed and reading them quite quickly and taking whatever jumps out of me from that. So I took that kind of tactic with the artwork, where it was like I would give it a couple of runs through, and then if an image came, I would draw it. And it was as simple as that, because I didn't want to have, again, thinking about videos and how you distill a song into like a concept for film. I didn't want it to be too sort of heavily, the drawing should bring another aspect to the poem, right, as opposed to me just describing something exactly as it is there. So that was a challenge. But luckily, Michael's a friend, and we've worked together and known each other for many years. So it was a very lovely collaborative thing, and he liked all the drawings, so they all got in. It was great. Yeah, I hope to do his next one as well. It's a real pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you. See you. All right, nice. Yeah,
We'll take our.
I forgot I was playing a show.
Over here.
Hey, I just wanted to thank you for the music of the years. I still remember where I was when I heard Things for the first time 8 years ago at 1 o'clock in the morning writing code. And it's the drone that really hit me hard.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, just what are you listening to now that you can't get out of your head? Because I couldn't get you out of my head for a long time.
Oh, wow, okay. Things is my favorite Frightened Rabbit song, by the way. So
really?
We're together on that one. What am I listening to now? I love, because I'm on tour, I love kind of cyclical modern classical stuff like Max Richter and unfortunately late Johann Johansson. And that kind of is all I can listen. In general, actually, that's because I analyze music when I listen to it, that kind of music is sort of analysis free, and that's really, really comforting to me. Yeah. So it's in that kind of wheelhouse, like Nils Fram and all those kind of studious dudes. They're kind of my rock stars, actually. I went to see Max Richter play recently, and I was taken aback. He was at the merch desk and stuff, and I couldn't even bring myself to go and say hi. It's all starstruck and stuff. So, yeah, it's a very meditative listen for me, and that's really important, as opposed to listening to a song and either deconstructing it because I think it sucks, or being really jealous because it's fucking awesome. That's really hard. That's sort of something I need to let go of a little bit more. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, and I thank you. Thank you for taking the time to sit and talk with us today in front of the Google and everyone. Scott Hutchison.
It was great. Thanks. Thank you very much.